So when I withhold grace from my partner, everyone can see it. Can you see me withholding this right now? How many times have you asked your partner, hey, is there something wrong? And they go, no, I'm fine, everything's good. What does a marriage without grace feel like? It feels like Oku Katayama and his wife Yumi. It feels cold. It feels distant. It feels like there's something between you. It feels transactional, right? You do this, you act this way, then I'll give you my love. Then I'll give you my sympathy. Then I'll give you my compassion. Then I'll give you the grace if you do what I want you to do or if you behave in a manner that I think you should behave in. It becomes conditional. And that's no way for a marriage to thrive. That's no way to have generous grace in a marriage. A marriage without grace can sometimes feel like you're holding a sandbag. This is a 75-pound sandbag from my garage. She looks very healthy today. I am not looking forward to picking this thing up. But I'm using this as an example because when you withhold grace from someone, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. Oh, girl, you are healthy today. Just give me 1 second. Good technique, very important. Yep. Okay. Front hold is also the worst way to hold something because it gets real heavy real fast. So when I withhold grace from my partner, everyone can see it. Can you see me withholding this right now? How many times have you asked your partner, hey, is there something wrong? And they go, no, I'm fine, everything's good. And you're like, are you sure there's nothing wrong? It seems like you're holding something. I'm not holding anything, everything's fine. Nothing is between us. I'm not holding anything against you at all. And they're like, oh, are you sure? Because your face is different and you're sweating a little bit. And you look really uncomfortable. No, I said I was fine. Everything's good. You start to withhold things from them. You start to withhold the good from them because you want to hold this for yourself. Because if I'm not giving it away, I'm keeping it. I'm being selfish. And we think if I hold this, that it's going to affect them and they're going to feel the weight of this. I can assure you, none of you feel the weight of 75 pounds on your chest like I do right now. I'm feeling this and I'm the one that's holding it. And there's something that happens the longer you hold this. You start to go through the 4 B's of withholding grace. The first thing is you get bothered. I get real bothered. I start to notice things about my partner. I start to notice things that kind of tick me off a little bit. Because if I'm not looking at them with unmerited, favorable disposition, and they're not earning my love, they're not doing the things that I think that they should be doing, then I'm gonna start to get a little irritated. I'm gonna be honest, holding this right now, I'm getting a little irritated. I wanna put it down, but I gotta keep going with this example. So we're gonna go to the second thing that happens after you get bothered. You start to build a case. How many of you have done this before? Raise your hands if you have built a case against your spouse before. They forgot to pick up the socks. Can't believe it. Left the shoes in the kitchen again. They forgot to pick up the pasta on the way home. All I asked them to do was get the pasta. That's all I asked them to do. One thing, they couldn't do one thing. My arms are killing me right now. So you start to build a case. And then the third thing that happens, this is my least favorite part of this, bitter. You get bitter. We are called to hate the sin and love the sinner. I hate bitterness. I hate it so much because bitterness is like a 1,000-year-old tree that is planted in your heart. And the roots grow down so deep and they affect everything. They affect the way you talk. They affect the way you view your spouse. They affect the way you view your kids. They affect everything. They affect the way that you view God. Because you feel like you should be owed something. You feel like they should act a different way. And when you don't get it, you just get more and more bitter. And then you blow up. That's the fourth thing. You blow up. You get mad. You get really frustrated with somebody, and then you just explode because you've been bothered, you built the case, you got bitter, now I gotta blow up. The funny thing about this sandbag, and the amazing thing about this, is that you can't drop this for me. Who is the only person that can let this go? Across all the campuses in here at Greenwood, who is the only person that can let this stupid thing go? Me, that's right. And you have to make the choice to let it go, because as soon as you can let it go, as soon as you can put that down, you can answer the next question. What does it feel like to give generous grace? Do you know how good it feels to not carry that thing anymore? Man, I'm telling you, do you know how good it feels to let that go? Do you know how good it feels to put that burden that was laying on my heart down? Because I'll be honest, when I was holding that and I was looking at all of you, I'm getting a little bothered. I was getting bothered at you and you didn't do anything to me. I'm holding that for myself. But when I can give that away, I can look at you all differently. You're just people who decided to show up to grow a little bit closer to God. That's it. But if I withhold that, I can't give that generous grace. In order to give it, you gotta lay that burden down. So today, maybe you're ready to lay this down today. Maybe that's what you gotta do. But it's not enough to think about what it feels like, because it feels good to give generous grace. It feels good to buy your spouse flowers when they didn't ask for it, or buy them that video game that you know that they want, that they didn't ask for. They didn't deserve that. You just gave it to them willingly. You wanted to be kind. You wanted to be compassionate. How can we practice giving generous grace? What does it look like to practice generous grace? This is not going to be an exhaustive list for you today. I got a few ideas that I want you to practice. Man, if you thought I sweat before during a message, jeez, oh Pete, I am dying up here. The first thing we need to do if we want to practice giving generous grace to our partners and having generous grace in a marriage is we need to imitate God. Imitate God. It says it clear as day in Ephesians chapter 5. It says, imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. Then it goes on to say, he loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Imitate God. Follow the example of Christ, the visible image of the invisible God, if you will, as it says in Colossians. You want to follow that. You want to imitate that. What do you need to do if you want to imitate somebody? What do you have to do? You have to kind of spend time with them a little bit, right? You got to observe them. You got to get around them. You got to start to understand how they view the world, how they think, how they look at things, how they regard things. If I want to imitate the grace of God, I need to start to understand just a little bit his unmerited favorable disposition towards me and the rest of mankind. Because if I don't put myself in front of that, I'm never going to be able to imitate him. I'm never going to know. That's why we say you've got to get in this book and you've got to get around this book as much as you possibly can, because if you want to imitate the qualities, the characters of God, living it out through Jesus Christ, if you want to follow that, you've got to get in this book. That's why Pastor Danny says so often, read this book every day. You're not reading it to check something off of a box. You're reading it because you want to imitate God and give that generous grace to everybody around you, especially your spouse. And if you read this book long enough, you might come across something like Psalm 86. This is a great way that you can imitate God in your marriage. In Psalm 86, it says, but you, O Lord, are a God of compassion and mercy, slow to get angry, and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. Man, what if that is how you could treat your spouse? What if that could be your favorable disposition towards your spouse that they don't earn, that they don't deserve? Because just like me and you, they're sinners too, right? What if that could be the way that you could love them?